color prognostication. Mass consciousness expresses its prevailing color awareness in dress, lighting, decoration, and other media. And events, too, have their inherent color elements. When these are of a universal character and charged with deep significance, they quickly translate themselves through the human consciousness into corresponding colors on the plane of expression. Constant talk of war during 1939 and its actual outbreak prior to the end of that year made red the predominant fashion in wearing apparel. As the war spread in 1940, red gained in popularity. Hats, dresses, coats, handbags of scarlet were conspicuous in any large assemblage. This was in keeping with nature's requirement, for bright red is the color related to strength, courage, initiative, and physical activity. It is valor's own radiation, a quality needed for the successful prosecution of the conflict. Red is a martial color. When the god of war hovers over a nation, he waves a red flag. When thought forms of war envelop a people, its psychological reaction manifests as a predominance of scarlet in the world of fashion. As the war progressed, something more was needed. The stress and strain of 1942 and 1943 was trending to break down man's fighting spirit. Morale builders became another need. Here again, color played an indispensable role. The brightest hues imaginable came to the fore. The more glaring and vivid, the better. So there followed a season of royal purples, bright fuchsias, and rich magentas, often used together in the most striking combinations. Some were fairly breathtaking, and they served to give vibrancy to the human spirit, lifting it above doubt and sorrow, depression and despair. They had the effect of turning the mind's eye towards the cloud's silver lining. All this was indicative of a brighter day on the other side of the trial. The year 1944 was a pastel year. The brilliant and climatic combinations of color were succeeded by the exquisite soft and soothing tints. A need for their healing effect had come after the long drawn-out months of war, the suspense and agony of waiting for news, the heartbreak evident by the too frequently displayed of a golden star. People could no longer tolerate the galvanic effect of the vivid colors. Victory on the battlefront was already conceded, its fulfillment only a matter of time. Hence, rather than a continued incitement to action, an attitude of poise was essential for concluding the conflict and making peace. This poise was the message that pastels introduced into that important work. The pastel's tints found beautiful expression in the Christmastide decorations of 1944. In some of our most famous big city department stores, the decorative motif of both window displays and interiors were not in the conventional reds and greens so much as in delicate rainbow colorings. In keeping with this trend, there was at least one important instance where the traditional Santa Claus was replaced by a silver minstrel angels, commenting on the change. The manger of one of the most emporium expressed the hope that was innovation in its color scheme would lessen in Christmas shoppers the stress and strain of nervous tension. With the conclusion of the war in 1945, thoughts were being directed towards healing the cleavage it had brought and affected large unities among people and nations. One world became almost a slogan of the time, So while the need for the solace and healing of pastels was still present and remained in the forefront of fashion, the color that then came to prevail was a lovely blue, the blue described as dusty or ash blue. This is the soft, misty shades of June sky, the color that belongs to healing, idealism, aspiration, and dreams of a better day and a better world. It might be said that 1946 saw the birth of a new world, for the atomic bomb had sounded the death of the old one. The thought upmost in many minds and the word on thousands of lips was that we had come to a turning point where the choice was between one world or none. Mass consciousness was concerned as never before with international relationships. And once again, the trends in one's thinking was reflected in the prevailing modes. We quote from a fashion note of the day, quote, "The spring's print all tell their story. There are Gulliver's Travels, and Chinese influences was strongly marked. One designer featured a Chinese blouse with Russian decorations to be worn with a Spanish sash, another evidence that we dress as we feel and think." End of quote. As we have said, red was the dominant color during the first years of the war, the red of destruction. But red is also the color of initiative and action. So for building a new world, red still had work to do and was much in evidence. Now, however, it appeared in a combination appropriate to its constructive role. Golden yellow is the unifying color and binder. A fashion note of that period states that gold and red, or tomato, was being shown extensively and bade fair to become extremely popular. The influence of the yellow as fused with red was reflected in the efforts to establish the United Nations as a successfully functioning organization, another evidence of color forces that are at work beneath the surface, becoming outwardly manifest in our everyday environment. It is now for the gold in the heart of mankind to transmute the red of war and conquest into the golden ray of the day star, that humanity may, quote, "walk in the light as one is in the light," end quote, and so have true and lasting fellowship, one with another. In an article which appeared in the New Age Interpreter for October 1949, it was observed that the latest fashion notes listed red as the most popular color. Smartly dressed women were wearing complete ensembles in red hats, dress coats, purse, and shoes. Navy blue, black, and brown, previously so widely favored for winter wear, were being replaced by the Martian color. It was then recalled that the last time red was fashion's decree was the winter 1940 and 1941, and that, true to its signification, it heralded our entry into World War II immediately following Japan's attack upon Pearl Harbor. Then it was asked if a return to red in women's fashion presaged events of like nature, for if it were merely a carryover from sanguine years so recently brought to a close, quote, "time will tell," end quote, was the article's conclusion. And so it did. In 1950, the United States engaged in another bloodletting struggle in Korea. Colors certainly speak a prophetic language if we would but interpret them right. In these days of extreme peril and stress, if sudden fashion should decree that brilliant crimson was the predominating color of the coming season in the light of the past color prognostications, we might well surmise that the war god is hovering very near.